The sapphire palace glittered like a shard of frozen starlight on the horizon of Valyria. Perched on the cliffs overlooking the azure sea, its towering spires caught the light of the system's twin suns, casting dazzling prisms across the Empire's capital. Inside, the halls buzzed with an energy that mirrored the rising tension in the galaxy. It was the eve of the Starfall Festival, the most anticipated event in Valyria's long history. Princess Alara stood in the Grand Observatory, a massive glass dome atop the palace that allowed a panoramic view of the stars. She was alone, save for her closest companion, Alex, a biomechanical feline that purred softly at her feet. The princess, cloaked in a flowing gown of shimmering silver, gazed at the cosmos with a faraway expression. The weight of the Empire rested on her shoulders, a burden that had grown heavier with every passing year. Tradition dictated that the Starfall Festival was not only a celebration of cosmic unity but also the stage for the princess to select her consort a suitor who would share the throne and secure alliances, crucial to Valyria's dominance. But Alara, with her keen mind and unyielding spirit, had turned away every suitor presented to her. Her refusals had become the subject of endless speculation. The nobles whispered that she was too idealistic, seeking perfection in an imperfect universe. The scholars suggested she was waiting for a partner who matched her intellect, someone who could challenge her vision for the Empire. And the common folk, who adored her, believed she sought a love story to rival the legends. "Are you ready for the chaos to begin?" a voice broke the silence. Alara turned to see Minister Vorthin, her chief advisor, standing at the entrance to the observatory. His stern expression softened as he met her gaze. Though he often disagreed with her choices, his loyalty was unwavering. "I suppose I have no choice," Alara replied, a faint smile playing at her lips. "The festival will proceed, and the galaxy will watch as I disappoint everyone again." Vorthin chuckled. "You underestimate your influence. The suitors are coming in droves, despite knowing your reputation. They believe they can sway you." "They believe they can control me," Alara corrected, her tone sharpening. "I will not choose a consort for political convenience or personal gain. If I marry, it will be someone who shares my vision, a partner, not a figurehead." "Such ideals are rare, Princess," Vorthin said gently. "And the galaxy is impatient. The allied planets grow restless. Without a consort, your leadership dash will remain mine alone," Alara interrupted. "I will not compromise the future of this empire for the sake of tradition." Vorthin inclined his head. "As you wish. But remember, even the brightest star must find balance in the universe." As he departed, Alara returned her gaze to the stars. Somewhere out there, the suitors were preparing their grand arrivals, each hoping to claim her favor. She felt no anticipation, only a lingering unease. Despite her resolve, she couldn't shake the fear that her refusal to follow tradition might lead to the unraveling of the stability her ancestors had worked so hard to achieve. "Balance," she murmured to herself. "Perhaps the minister is right. But where does one find balance in a galaxy so fractured?" As the first of the starships began descending into the atmosphere, their brilliant trails painting the evening sky, Alara stood resolute. She would face the festival on her own terms, as she always had. Little did she know, a ripple in the fabric of fate was about to set her on a path no one could have predicted, a path that would change the destiny of the galaxy forever. The Valyrian skies were alight with the arrival of the galaxy's most magnificent starships. Sleek and glimmering vessels from every corner of the known universe descended onto the landing platforms of the Sapphire Palace, their unique designs reflecting the diversity of their occupants. The Starfall Festival had begun, and with it came the parade of suitors vying for the hand of Princess Alara. The courtyards of the palace were a whirlwind of activity. Musicians played ethereal melodies on instruments that resonated with the natural frequencies of the universe, while holographic displays wove scenes of Valyria's storied past. Crowds gathered to watch the procession of delegates, their voices a mix of awe and speculation. Each suitor arrived with their retinue, presenting themselves with a flourish designed to capture attention. The crystalline emissaries of Crystallon shimmered like living diamonds, their faceted forms refracting light into rainbows. The shadowy forms of Nocturne glided silently, their dark cloaks swirling as if they were woven from the void itself. The Virian nobles, tall and willowy with bioluminescent patterns glowing on their skin, moved with an otherworldly grace. Princess Alara stood at the head of the grand atrium, her expression calm and unreadable. Flanked by her advisors and a ceremonial guard, she greeted each suitor with the decorum expected of her station, though her heart remained unmoved. She couldn't help but feel the weight of expectation in the air, a tangible pressure that threatened to stifle her resolve. Among the grand entrances, one arrival stood out not for its majesty, but for its sheer unexpectedness. A small, battered starship appeared on the horizon, its exterior marked with scars from countless travels. As it descended awkwardly onto the landing platform, the crowd fell silent. This was not the vessel of a dignitary or noble. This was something entirely different. From the ship emerged Leo, a human explorer from the distant, forgotten planet of Earth. Clad in a simple flight jacket and boots that had seen better days, he stepped onto the polished platform with a mix of wonder and trepidation. His tousled hair and wide eyes contrasted starkly with the composed suitors who had arrived before him. "Who is that?" whispered one of the palace courtiers, their voice a mixture of disbelief and disdain. "A human," another replied, their tone incredulous. "What is he doing here?" Leo seemed unaware of the murmurs as his gaze wandered over the splendor of the palace. The intricate carvings of the sapphire throne, the towering spires, and the vibrant alien lifeforms filled him with awe. It was as if he had stepped into a dream. Princess Alara noticed him immediately, though she made no outward reaction. Something about his presence intrigued her, his lack of pretense, his unpolished demeanor in a sea of perfection. He was utterly out of place, and yet there was an air of sincerity about him that caught her attention. "Who allowed this?" "Human to attend," one of the ministers hissed to Vorthan. "It appears he stumbled upon the festival's coordinates," Vorthan replied, his tone laced with both amusement and irritation. "An anomaly, nothing more. We'll deal with it." "Wait," Alara interjected, her voice steady but commanding. "Let him stay." The ministers exchanged uneasy glances but bowed in deference. Alara's word was law, and she had made her decision. Leo, unaware of the debate he had sparked, found himself ushered into the palace. Despite the glances and whispers, he remained fascinated by his surroundings. He had seen many wonders in his travels, but nothing compared to the grandeur of Valyria. As the suitors assembled in the great hall for the opening ceremony, Leo stood at the very edge, unsure of what was happening but eager to learn. Princess Alara took her place on the sapphire throne, her gaze sweeping over the gathered suitors. For a moment, her eyes lingered on Leo, and a faint smile tugged at the corners of her lips. "Let the trials begin," she declared, her voice echoing through the hall. Unbeknownst to anyone, the human explorer and outsider in every sense of the word was about to alter the course of the galaxy. The festival had brought together the best and brightest from across the stars, but it would be this unassuming human who would stand out in ways no one could have anticipated. The great hall of the Sapphire Palace transformed overnight into a labyrinth of challenges. The trials, a time-honored tradition of the Starfall Festival, were designed to test not only the skills and capabilities of the suitors, but also their values. For Princess Alara, these trials were more than ceremonial. They were her chance to discern who, if anyone, might share her vision for the Empire's future. The suitors were briefed at dawn. A towering hologram of the trial's overseer, an artificial intelligence named Ardentiz, outlined the nature of the challenges. "You will face 3 trials," the AI declared in a voice that resonated with authority. "Intellect, courage, and empathy. Only those who demonstrate true merit shall succeed." The suitors nodded, many with confident smirks. Most had trained their entire lives for moments like this. Among them stood Leo, nervously adjusting the straps of his worn backpack. He had no idea how he'd gotten this far, but figured he might as well see it through. Trial 1. The Maze of Minds. The first trial took place in a virtual reality simulation called the Maze of Minds. Each suitor was placed in an identical labyrinth where they faced puzzles that required logic, lateral thinking, and a deep understanding of galactic history. The crystalline beings of Crystalline solved the puzzles with precision, their multifaceted intellects shining in the digital realm. The shadowy forms of Nocturne moved fluidly, relying on intuition and stealth. Leo, by contrast, fumbled at first, unfamiliar with the high-tech interface. But as he navigated the maze, he began using creativity and unconventional methods, skipping over complex traps by stacking objects, or solving puzzles by sheer trial and error. By the trial's end, Leo's name appeared on the leaderboard. He hadn't come in first, but he'd passed, much to the surprise of the court. Elara, observing from the control room, raised an eyebrow. "He's resourceful," she murmured to herself. Trial 2, the Gauntlet of Courage. The second trial tested bravery. In the Gauntlet of Courage, suitors were dropped into a holographic environment where they faced perilous scenarios, rescuing civilians from a collapsing structure, navigating a deadly storm, and confronting simulated predators. Most suitors approached the trial with bravado, using their advanced technology and training to overcome obstacles. Leo, on the other hand, had no specialized gear. When he encountered a frightened holographic child trapped under debris, he used his raw strength to lift the wreckage and calm the simulation's cries. When faced with a charging predator, he didn't fight but instead distracted it with his backpack before sprinting to safety. Leo's unorthodox approach didn't go unnoticed. While others flaunted their strength and combat skills, he focused on problem-solving and protecting others. Trial 3, the Empathy Sphere. The final trial, and the one closest to Elara's heart, was the Empathy Sphere. Each suitor was tasked with resolving a simulated planetary crisis, a resource shortage that risked spiraling into war. The suitors had to mediate between two factions on the brink of conflict and find a solution that preserved peace. This trial proved to be the most challenging. Many suitors used coercion or promises of military support to enforce their will. The Virian noble deployed a calculated but cold strategy, while the Crystalline emissary relied on logic, disregarding emotional nuance. Leo, however, took a different approach. He spent time listening to both factions, asking questions and seeking to understand their perspectives. Using his experiences from Earth, where he had worked as an aid worker before becoming an explorer, he proposed a plan to share resources through sustainable technology. It wasn't flashy or immediate, but it addressed the root of the problem. When the trial concluded, Leo's solution was ranked as one of the most effective by Ardentes. The court was stunned. A human unarmed, unsophisticated, and entirely out of his depth had excelled in the trial that mattered most to Princess Elara. Aftermath of the trials. As the trials ended, the suitors gathered once more in the Great Hall. Holographic displays listed their rankings, with Leo's name standing proudly in the top tier. The other suitors, especially the aristocrats, glared at him with barely concealed disdain. Elara, observing the results, found herself smiling for the first time in days. Leo's performance was unconventional and imperfect, but it had revealed something none of the other suitors had: shown genuine compassion and a willingness to think beyond himself. When the results were announced, Elara addressed the assembly. "These trials have shown me not just skill, but character. I thank you all for your participation." Her gaze lingered on Leo, standing awkwardly among the towering aliens and resplendent nobles. For the first time, she felt a spark of something she couldn't quite name: curiosity, admiration, and perhaps the faintest flicker of hope. The suitors left the hall, many retreating to strategize their next moves. Leo, on the other hand, wandered into the palace gardens, marveling at the bioluminescent flora. He didn't notice when Elara approached, silent as a shadow. "You performed well today," she said, her voice breaking the stillness. Leo turned, startled. "Oh, thanks. I'm not sure how I made it through." You made it through because you were honest, Alara said. You didn't rely on power or status. You relied on yourself. Leo scratched his head. To be honest, I'm not sure I belong here. Alara smiled faintly. Neither am I. But perhaps that's why you're exactly where you need to be. As she walked away, Leo stared after her, wondering what he'd gotten himself into. He had come to Valyria by accident, but it was starting to feel like destiny had plans of its own. AI Spurs. The grand ballroom of the Sapphire Palace was awash with starlight, thanks to the ceiling's holographic projection of the galaxy's swirling expanse. It was the final evening of the Starfall Festival, the night when Princess Alara would announce her decision. The suitors, dressed in their finest regalia, stood assembled in a semicircle before the sapphire throne, their expressions a mix of anticipation and anxiety. The court was abuzz with speculation. The most likely candidates were clear: the Crystalline emissary, whose intellect had dazzled, the Virian noble, whose poise and strategy were impeccable, and the Nocturnian Shadow Lord, whose cunning was unparalleled. No one mentioned Leo, the human explorer. To the court, he was a fluke, a curiosity who had somehow stumbled into their midst. Alara, resplendent in a gown that shimmered like liquid light, entered the room to a fanfare of celestial music. She ascended the steps to the sapphire throne, her gaze sweeping over the gathered suitors. The room fell silent as she raised a hand, signaling the start of her speech. The speech honored suitors, esteemed guests, and citizens of the Valyrian Empire. She began, her voice steady and clear. This festival has been a celebration of unity, diversity, and the strength of our galaxy. The trials were not merely tests of skill, but of character, for I seek not just a consort, but a partner who shares my vision for a better future. Her words carried a gravity that silenced even the most cynical whispers. She paused, letting the weight of her statement settle over the room. In the past days, I have seen strength, intelligence, and bravery. But I have also seen hubris, ambition, and a desire for power. My choice cannot be based on tradition or expectation. It must be based on what I believe is best for the future of this empire. She stepped forward, descending the throne to stand among the suitors. Her gaze met each of theirs, lingering briefly before moving on. When she reached Leo, she stopped. The choice to everyone's surprise, this human traveler from a distant and forgotten planet has shown qualities I value most. Compassion, ingenuity, and a willingness to act not for glory, but for the greater good. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The suitors exchanged incredulous glances, their disbelief palpable. Alara continued, undeterred. Leo, you came to this festival not as a suitor, but as a curious soul seeking to understand the universe. In doing so, you have reminded us of the power of sincerity and humility. You have shown that greatness does not require grand titles or noble lineage. She turned to face the assembly. I choose Leo, the human, as my consort. The reaction. For a moment, the hall was silent, as though the air had been sucked from the room. Then came the outcry. The Crystalline emissary protested, his crystalline voice resonating with indignation. The Virian noble's bioluminescent patterns flared in anger, and the Nocturnian Shadow Lord let out a low growl of disapproval. Your Highness, one of the ministers interjected, his voice trembling with barely concealed frustration, this choice defies all logic. What can this human offer to the Empire? Alara's eyes narrowed. The question is not what he can offer, but what we can achieve together. This empire needs more than alliances forged through tradition. It needs leaders who are unafraid to challenge the status quo, who value the lives of all beings over their own power. Her words silenced the dissent, though the tension in the room remained thick. Leo, standing awkwardly at the center of the storm, finally found his voice. I don't know what to say. I didn't come here to dash. You don't need to say anything, Alara interrupted, a soft smile on her lips. Your actions have already spoken for you. A new beginning. The announcement sent shockwaves through the galaxy. News of Alara's choice spread like wildfire, sparking debates, celebrations, and outrage across allied planets. The court remained divided, with some fearing the instability this decision might bring and others admiring the princess's audacity. In the days that followed, Leo found himself thrust into a role he had never imagined. He struggled to navigate the intricacies of Valyrian politics and the expectations of the court, but Alara was by his side, guiding him with patience and confidence. Together, they began implementing reforms, focusing on diplomacy and technological innovation. Their partnership, though unconventional, inspired many. Leo's humanity, a blend of vulnerability and resilience, became a symbol of hope for a galaxy yearning for change. Epilogue. Months later, as Leo stood beside Alara on the balcony of the Sapphire Palace, looking out over the bustling capital, he couldn't help but marvel at how his life had changed. The festival, the trials, the impossible choice, it all felt like a dream. "You never told me why you really chose me," he said, glancing at Alara. She smiled, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "Because you reminded me of something I had forgotten," she replied. "That greatness isn't born from power or perfection. It's born from the courage to be yourself in a universe that demands otherwise." As the twin sun set over Valyria, casting the sky in hues of gold and crimson, Leo realized that fate had brought him here for a reason. Together, he and Alara had the potential to reshape the galaxy, not as rulers, but as partners united by a shared dream. And so, the story of the human who won the heart of the princess and the respect of a galaxy became legend, a beacon of hope for generations to come.